Welcome to the course Leadership for Student Achievement in the 21st Century. In practicum number 1, we looked at what it means for students to be college and career ready, how to develop a vision for college and career readiness, and how to communicate and implement that vision throughout your building or district. In Module 1, Grit and Lifelong Learning for 21st Century Success, Developing Your Mental Model, we will be discussing characteristics of lifelong learners and strategies to help foster essential habits of mind for all students. Before we begin, you will want to download in your CC Studio. The first one is your PLC discussion guide that will take you through a set of questions to explore the content further as a group. And the second is the Grit study from the U.S. Department of Ed. Let's begin with a quick one-word activity. With your paper and pen, sitting there by yourself for just a few moments, I want you to complete the following sentence with just one adjective. A lifelong learner is. Now you fill in the blank. What words did you think of? Knowledgeable, well-read, imaginative, motivated, curiosity? Take a few moments, pause the video, turn to your peers, and discuss what words you each wrote down. See if you can come to consensus with only one of the words. Lifelong learning. Now, while Wikipedia may not always be the most academic or expert citation, this definition really hits on what we want for all students: to continuously and independently pursue and gain knowledge for self-betterment. You see, lifelong learners, they never stop wondering and seeking new information and ideas to answer questions and explore the world around them. In this module, we will explore what it means to be a lifelong learner, define the essential habits of mind for lifelong learners, and identify strategies we can use to make sure school is an apprenticeship for lifelong learning. We want students to leave our building with the traits they need to continue in their pursuit of knowledge. To get started, take a minute to visualize a student you taught who exhibited strong learning and work habits. A student who would be a lifelong learner. What did that student look like in your classroom? As you thought about this student, you likely visualized someone who was engaged in their learning. But what does that mean? What were those characteristics? What did they look like? Did you think about students who were confident, passionate about various topics, asked thoughtful questions, sought help when needed, worked well with others, explored the world around them, and took creative approaches to solving problems? Students who are engaged in their learning in your classroom are on the path to becoming lifelong learners and acquiring the essential habits of mind. Let's take a look at those habits. We have identified 8 essential habits of lifelong learners: grit, curiosity, confidence with courage, good at exploration and investigation, experimentation, imagination, sociability, reflection. With these 8 traits, any student will be on the path to continued pursuit of knowledge and acquisition of new information and critical skills. For each of these habits, we'll discuss its characteristics, what it looks like in the classroom, and strategies to foster these traits in all students. With the implementation of the Common Core State Standards and the increasing cognitive demands for 21st century learning, students must be able to analyze and solve complex problems, communicate clearly, synthesize information, apply knowledge, and generalize learning to other settings. You know, it is our job to make sure that students are equipped with both the knowledge and the skills they need to succeed in our classrooms and beyond. These 8 essential habits of mind are performance-oriented values, academic behaviors that guide how students interact with work and tasks. Can these essential habits be taught? Absolutely, yes. A student's intellectual ability is not fixed or predetermined. It is a result of hard work, determination, and practice. Carol Dweck, a Stanford University psychologist, talks about the importance of a growth mindset in her research. She describes the concept this way. In a fixed mindset, people believe their basic qualities, like their intelligence or talent, are simply fixed traits. They spend their time documenting their intelligence or talent instead of developing them. They also believe that talent alone creates success without effort. They're wrong. In a growth mindset, people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. This view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. Virtually all great people have had these qualities. In order to instill a growth mindset and build lifelong learners, teaching these essential habits of mind must be an articulated goal and priority in your classrooms and schools. Let's take a look at each of the habits in more detail. What if the ability to succeed in life and in school depends on much more than your ability to learn quickly and easily? Are your smartest students always your highest performing students? Or do you have high performers who are not the ones with the highest IQs in your classrooms? Why is there not always a direct correlation? The idea of grit is getting a lot of attention these days as a key characteristic for students who will be successful and become lifelong learners. Grit is passion plus perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina and sticking with your future, day in, day out, week after week, month after month, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Students who have grit demonstrate a willingness to work hard in spite of obstacles and frustration. Students with grit have a resilience. They know mistakes are for learning from, not for getting upset about. They are patient and persistent, but they also know when to give up on things, not because they are afraid of failing or looking stupid, but because they have genuinely reapprised the need to know. Angela Lee Duckworth has done extensive research on grit. She gave a TED Talk in May of 2013 on the importance of grit in academic achievement. Now let's watch her video.
When I was 27 years old, I left a very demanding job in management consulting for a job that was even more demanding, teaching. I went to teach 7th graders math in the New York City public schools. And like any teacher, I made quizzes and tests, I gave out homework assignments. When the work came back, I calculated grades. What struck me was that IQ was not the only difference between my best and my worst students. Some of my strongest performers did not have stratospheric IQ scores. Some of my smartest kids weren't doing so well. And that got me thinking. The kinds of things you need to learn in 7th grade math, sure, they're hard. Ratios, decimals, the area of a parallelogram. But these concepts are not impossible. And I was firmly convinced that every one of my students could learn the material if they worked hard and long enough. After several more years of teaching, I came to the conclusion that what we need in education is a much better understanding of students and learning from a motivational perspective, from a psychological perspective. In education, the one thing we know how to measure best is IQ. But what if doing well in school and in life depends on much more than your ability to learn quickly and easily? So I left the classroom and I went to graduate school to become a psychologist. I started studying kids and adults in all kinds of super challenging settings. And in every study, my question was, who is successful here and why? My research team and I went to West Point Military Academy. We tried to predict which cadets would stay in military training and which would drop out. We went to the National Spelling Bee and tried to predict which children would advance farthest in competition. We studied rookie teachers working in really tough neighborhoods, asking which teachers are still going to be here in teaching by the end of the school year. And of those, who will be the most effective at improving learning outcomes for their students? We partnered with private companies, asking which of these salespeople is going to keep their jobs and who's going to earn the most money. In all those very different contexts, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, it wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago, I started studying grit in the Chicago public schools. I asked thousands of high school juniors to take grit questionnaires, and then waited around more than a year to see who would graduate. Turns out that grittier kids were significantly more likely to graduate, even when I matched them on every characteristic I could measure, things like family income, standardized achievement test scores, even how safe kids felt when they were at school. So it's not just at West Point or the National Spelling Bee that grit matters, it's also in school, especially for kids at risk for dropping out. To me, the most shocking thing about grit is how little we know, how little science knows about building it. Every day, parents and teachers ask me, how do I build grit in kids? What do I do to teach kids a solid work ethic? How do I keep them motivated for the long run? The honest answer is, I don't know. What I do know is that talent doesn't make you gritty. Our data show very clearly that there are many talented individuals who simply do not follow through on their commitments. In fact, in our data, grit is usually unrelated or even inversely related to measures of talent. So far, the best idea I've heard about building grit in kids is something called growth mindset. This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol Dweck, and it is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with your effort. Dr. Dweck has shown that when kids read and learn about the brain and how it changes and grows in response to challenge, they're much more likely to persevere when they fail because they don't believe that failure is a permanent condition. So growth mindset is a great idea for building grit, but we need more. And that's where I'm going to end my remarks, because that's where we are. That's the work that stands before us. We need to take our best ideas, our strongest intuitions, and we need to test them. We need to measure whether we've been successful, and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over again with lessons learned. In other words, we need to be gritty about getting our kids grittier. Thank you.
Now let's take a moment to reflect on how teachers can best support students in acquiring academic grit, passion, and perseverance. Pause the presentation to read the following question. Select your answer and then resume the presentation.